Hey, and welcome back to my channel. This is The Casual Knitter. Hi, my name is Nadine, and today we are going to talk about how to cast on your project. Casting on is obviously the very first thing that you're going to need to do when you are starting to knit. So today you're going to learn that very basic skill so that we can then build from there, and you can start learning all the stitches that you are going to need in order to practice and then eventually create your own patterns, your own garments, not meaning to actually come up with patterns, but to be able to use patterns that you can find all over the internet, either free or to purchase, but so that you can actually make your own things. I'm here to teach you all those basics, the things that you're going to need in order to make most patterns out there. We're going to talk about how to cast on a very, very simple way. I'm going to show it to you again right over here under my light so that you can follow along easily. So it's easy for you to repeat it and to, rewind it. And it's going to be very clear to you how to cast on. It's something that, again, I think I said this last time, but it seems like it's something that once you master it and once you have it down, you're just not going to forget about it. It's like riding a bike. So let's get started. Let's learn how to cast on, and I'm going to share some tips and tricks with you as we go. Some things that I have learned much later after I already knew how to actually cast on, but there's just a few things that'll make it even easier, and let's dive right in. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So you are only going to really need two things to cast on your project, and that is your yarn. So I picked a bulky yarn. This is a yarn that is great for, sweaters for the winter time, scarves, wraps, things like that, and also great for blankets. For a beginner project, a blanket is a great project. Next, you're going to want to have your knitting needles available and ready. We'll talk about this in a later video, but I personally prefer round knitting needles over the straight ones. There's many reasons why I do prefer those. So what you want to pay attention to, and this has nothing to do with the actual cast on, but it's just a tip, is that your knitting needle size is correspondent to the yarn, and you will find that on the little paper that is wrapped around the yarn. It doesn't have this anymore because I already wound this yarn on in a different size. But you will find on there the actual size recommendation. We're taking one of your needles into your right hand, and I'm going to show you how to cast on just straight up first, and after that I'm going to give you a little trick to make sure that you have enough of a tail of your yarn to have long enough length to make sure that you have to cast on all of your stitches. Because when a big project like a blanket, for example, you might have to cast on like 100 or even 200 stitches, and it's kind of hard to gauge how much of this yarn you'll need. So I'll show you a little trick. Okay, let's do this. You're going to start by just holding the yarn in your left hand, and you're going to grab it over on your needle, right? And this is how I'm holding it. It's not going to slide down. I'm just going to hold it right here. Now you have these two tails hanging off of this side, and now there's no really explaining this. This is just showing how to grab it. The way you want to put this on is putting the yarn through these two fingers right here, and then grab them, or grab the yarn underneath the needle with your thumb and your index finger. And then you're going to grab this piece right over here. And that's how you're holding it in your hand. So I'm going to hold this like this for a while so you can actually see how it's laying in my hand, and then we're going to start casting on. Let me show you one more time. You're going to want to rewind this. Because I remember it took me a while to get the hang of just how to hold it in my hand. I learned this a long time ago, so at this point it's just I grab it like this really fast. And that's why I even had trouble slowing it down, because when I slow it down, I'm like, wait, how am I actually doing it? So right here, and then grab it this way. All right, ready to cast on. So you want to pull it down a little bit, and because we're not tying a knot on this needle, this is actually a trick I learned in order to make the edge really nice and neat. So we're not tying a knot on here. Some people do this, but you want to hold it so it doesn't slide around, okay? So here we go. I'm going to insert the needle right here. Grab the yarn from your index finger like as if you were to knit, and then pull it through as if you were knitting a stitch. Now you're going to grab under here, and that's how you control how tight it's going to become. So don't pull it too tight, because you need to make sure that your needle will, for the first row, fit right under here. So if you pull it too tight, it's going to be a little weird. It's still going to work, but it's just not going to be as fun. So this is already now counting as 2 stitches right here on my needle. And we're going to continue. So if you have it up here, it's not going to work. So you have to pull it down in order for this yarn to cross over here by your thumb. And then again, go in here, grab the yarn as if you were knitting, and then just pull it through, let go, and then use the thumb to pull it gently. And then you're back in your position too, because now you have it wrapped around the thumb again, just like that. One more time. And there you go. Again, you pull it down. Let me show you again how I'm grabbing it. Just like this. Grab it at the bottom so it doesn't slip out. And here we go. Pull through, let go, and then grab it again in order to pull it tight. I'm going to see if I can maybe bend down just this way a little, so you can see it from a different angle. Grab, let go, and then pull it kind of a medium tight. So you still want to be able to move these around. I'm also using a metal needle, not a wooden one, or bamboo, so it's a bit easier to slide them back and forth. Okay, let's do a couple more. Eventually it'll go like this, and you see that the tail end of my yarn is also becoming shorter as I go, but it's also pulling from the actual yarn ball itself, so you want to keep pulling that. So here we go, and I would always leave a good amount of yarn here so it doesn't slip through and just undo the beginning of your knitting. So you have that right there. Some people tie a knot in here as well. Now, let's see. This is now what your cast on stitches looks like. I have not counted these, so I don't know how many they are, but I do know that the first one counts as a stitch, even though you didn't tie a knot at the time. So in order to now, let me do one thing first. In order to start your row and to knit the very first row, which is obviously the next step after casting on, and if you watched the last video, you'll be able to actually knit that first row. So if you haven't, go back to it. We are doing the knit stitch in that video. It's just a garter stitch. So this is how you have it in your hand once you're done, right? So here's where you came off, you let go. Now, you twist it around like this so that you actually see the bottom of your knitted project or of your cast on line towards you with your left hand. Now, the long tail, which is part of the yarn, right? The one that you're going to need to actually knit, is going to go around the back, because you're going to need it on your left hand, because we're doing continental knitting. So the little tail that you have left over is just going to hang over here, and it's going to kind of tighten itself a little bit more once you start knitting that first row. So don't worry about that coming loose or undone or anything like that. So here's now my second needle. This is what it looks like. Just a big circle. Sometimes they can be twisted like this. It's kind of annoying, but all you need to do is just kind of turn them around and make them nice and open. That's the best way to do it. Now, here we go. we're just going to start knitting that very first row. So again, to knit the knit stitch, you go and insert your needle into that first stitch. You grab your yarn, and the first one is always a little bit tricky, so you're going to hold it and pull through and then pull it off your needle. And then you can kind of adjust this a little right here. Pull this a little bit tighter if needed. And again, you can also do that later on. But don't worry, nothing's going to happen. You're just going to continue knitting your row. Generally, in most projects that I come across, the very first row is always knitted. I don't think I remember it being a purl stitch for the first one, which would be a little bit harder to do. But I think the setup row is generally a knitted row. So here you go. There's your first row of knitted stitches right there. So this is how you start knitting as soon as you're done casting on. And now I'm going to show you. So see, and here's your tail, and it's all good and secure. No worries here. And at the very end, when you're done with your project, we are going to weave this in so that you can't even see this anymore, and it's secure and safe. All right, let me show you a little trick when you cast on. When you're casting on, and you're not sure how much of yarn you're going to need, but you also don't want to waste a bunch of it, here is a little trick that you can use. So you will take your needle, and no, I start here in the back. I always make that mistake. You're going to hold it here. So right where the needle starts to kind of begin to be a little bit thicker, that's where you're going to hold your yarn. And then you're going to wrap it around 10 times. 10, roughly. It doesn't have to be perfect. But now you know right about how much yarn you're going to need in order to cast on 10 stitches. So from here, however many stitches you need to cast on, let's say it has to be 30, you would then just simply take the same length and measure out 3 more times this length with your yarn right here. You can see that. And then this, I usually add just a little bit just in case, because you don't want to, that's the other part. If you start too close to the end, you might end up casting on 100 stitches, and then you'll notice that you're just a little bit short, and that is like the most annoying thing ever, because you're going to have to do it all over again. So this is where you want to start, and then you just do what we did earlier again. Remember, you hold it here in your left hand. Sorry, it's the other way around. Tail goes to the left, so your tail end will always be towards you. And this is the other one. Now we go in again. You're in position to start casting on. And here is another one of my tricks. So here we start counting now. And if you have 30 to cast on, it's relatively easy to keep track and keep count. And you can count and cast on to 30 relatively soon or quickly. However, as soon as you have more than like 40 or 50 stitches to cast on, it can get a little tricky. Sometimes you get interrupted, or you just don't want to miscount by a single stitch because it can mess up your entire pattern. You want to make sure that every 10th stitch you put a marker on your needle, and that way you'll be able to track really quickly if you missed a stitch somewhere or if you missed casting on a stitch. So we're at 4 now. 10. So now I have 10 out of the 30 that I'm casting on, and I'm going to place a stitch marker right here. It's not doing anything, it's not hurting anything, and then we continue and we do another 10. And we add another stitch marker, and you continue on until you get to your desired cast on stitches, but you only ever have to count by 10, and you're not going to lose track. I hope that was a very helpful video for you to actually start your knitting journey, to cast on your first project, and then go back and watch the video where I show you how to do the knit stitch so that you can then continue on in your project and in your pattern. I highly recommend just practicing with these videos, and once you feel safe enough to pick up a pattern, we're going to talk about how to read a pattern and you know, what to look out for in a beginner pattern and things like that in future videos. For now, I would just highly recommend for you to just do a cast on, practices maybe with different sizes of needles and yarn, and then see if you can knit that first row and just do a couple practice rows so that you can get a feel for it and see how it feels, and if you like the chunky yarn or if you maybe prefer the thinner yarn, things like that. And please be sure to reach out to me if you need any help, if there's anything that I can help you with, that questions you might have. You can always reach me on my Instagram in my DMs, or you can just reply to an email that you get from me as well. Happy knitting, friends.